Part 1. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin not with passionate glances across crowded rooms, but with the innocent schemes of 11-year-old girls who believe their single parents deserve happiness. This is the story of how two wounded hearts found healing through the determined matchmaking of their daughters, and how love can bloom even when we're convinced we're not ready for it. Jayla Ellis gripped the steering wheel of her reliable Honda Civic, studying the imposing glass building that would house her new life. At 36, she'd fought for every promotion, every opportunity, every moment of respect in her corporate career. Today marked the culmination of years of hard work, the regional manager position that would finally give her and her daughter Iris the security they deserved. The divorce papers in her glove compartment weren't quite final, but Derek's betrayal was behind her now. This fresh start in this affluent suburb was exactly what they needed. Her phone buzzed with a text from 11-year-old Iris. "Mom, I already know I'm going to love my new school. The girl next to me in the office has the best laugh, and she says her dad makes the most amazing pancakes. Can she come over soon? Please, please, please?" Jayla smiled despite her nerves. Trust Iris to make a best friend before the first bell even rang. Her daughter had inherited her late grandmother's gift for seeing the good in everyone, a trait that both blessed and worried Jayla in equal measure. Meanwhile, across town in a sprawling contemporary home that overlooked the private lake community, Cade Bennett was experiencing his own version of Monday morning chaos. At 44, he'd built his tech consulting firm from nothing, creating the kind of wealth that afforded his daughter Clare every opportunity. But no amount of money could fill the mother-shaped hole in their carefully constructed life. "Dad, you're burning the eggs again," Clare observed from her perch at the kitchen island, her dark hair still damp from her shower. She had her mother's delicate features but thankfully none of Amanda's instability. "You always get distracted when you're thinking about boring work stuff." Cade flipped the eggs with perhaps more force than necessary. "Since when did you become the breakfast critic in this family?" "Since you started making breakfast that even our dog wouldn't eat." "Oh wait. We don't have a dog because you're too worried about having another living thing to take care of." Claire's tone was light, but Cade caught the underlying message. His daughter was growing up fast, becoming more perceptive about the walls he'd built around their small family unit. "We've discussed this, sweetheart. Our schedule is complicated enough without letting anyone else into our perfect little bubble," Clare finished, sliding off her stool to grab her backpack. "I know, Dad. But maybe today will be different. I have a really good feeling about today." There was something in her tone that should have warned him, but Cade was already mentally reviewing his morning meetings. He kissed the top of his daughter's head, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Have a good day at school, princess. I'll pick you up at 3:15. Actually, Dad, I might be a few minutes late. I want to help the new girl find her way around. Her name's Iris, and I think we're going to be amazing friends." If Cade had been paying closer attention, he might have noticed the calculating gleam in his daughter's eyes, the same expression she wore when she was planning something elaborate. But he was already reaching for his phone, his mind shifting to the client presentation that would determine his firm's next quarter. 8 hours later, the afternoon pickup line at Westfield Elementary buzzed with the typical chaos of parents, nannies, and caregivers waiting for their charges. Cade sat in his BMW, windows down, enjoying the rare October afternoon that felt more like summer than fall. He'd wrapped up his presentation early, successfully, judging by Trevor's enthusiastic texts, and actually felt relaxed for the first time in weeks. That peace shattered the moment he saw Clare emerge from the school building. She wasn't alone. Beside her walked a girl with beautiful dark skin and bright, intelligent eyes, and their body language screamed best friends forever. But what stopped him cold wasn't the sight of his daughter with a new friend, it was the woman walking toward them. Jayla Ellis moved with the confident stride of someone who'd learned to navigate professional boardrooms and parent-teacher conferences with equal skill. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun that showcased the elegant line of her neck, and her navy blazer couldn't quite hide the curves that spoke of a woman comfortable in her own skin. There was something about the way she held herself, strong but not defensive, professional but warm, that made Cade forget he was supposed to be watching for Clare. Then their eyes met across the parking lot. The impact was immediate and unsettling. Jayla's pulse quickened as she took in the tall man leaning against an expensive car, his attention fixed completely on her. He had the kind of presence that suggested both success and depth, dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it during stressful meetings, eyes that seemed to see too much, and a jaw that spoke of determination. There was something in his expression that reminded her of her own protective instincts, the way single parents learn to guard their hearts and their children with equal fierceness. "Mom!" Iris's voice broke through the unexpected tension. "That's Claire's dad. Isn't he exactly like I described?" Jayla blinked, realizing she'd been staring. When had Iris described him? And why did her daughter look so pleased with herself? "Dad!" Clare bounced on her toes, waving enthusiastically. "Come meet Iris and her mom." Cade found himself walking toward them before his brain could engage properly. Up close, Jayla was even more striking, his skin with warm undertones that suggested time spent outdoors, eyes that held hard-won intelligence. A small scar on her chin somehow enhanced rather than diminished her beauty. When she smiled, careful and professional, he noticed a tiny gap between her front teeth that was absolutely captivating. "You must be Iris's mom," he extended his hand with a genuine smile. "I'm Cade Bennett. Claire hasn't stopped talking about your daughter since this morning." Jayla Ellis, her handshake was firm and warm. "And from what Iris tells me, Claire has excellent taste in both friends and pancake chefs." They stood there a moment longer than necessary, hands still connected, both aware of their daughters watching with barely concealed excitement. Jayla was the first to step back, her professional instincts kicking in even as her body betrayed her with a flush of heat that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. "Mom," Iris said with the kind of innocent tone that every parent recognizes as dangerous, "I was telling Claire how you said we should always be neighborly in a new community. And Claire said her dad always says the same thing about being welcoming to newcomers." Claire nodded enthusiastically. "Dad, remember how you said we should invite the new neighbors over for dinner sometime? Well, Iris and her mom are practically neighbors. They live in the townhouse complex just past the lake." Cade felt the trap closing but couldn't quite figure out how two 11-year-olds had maneuvered him into this position so smoothly. "That's very thoughtful of you to remember, sweetheart, but I'm sure Ms. Ellis. It's Jayla," she corrected gently, then immediately wondered why she'd offered her first name. Something about the way he'd stumbled over her title suggested he'd been checking for a wedding ring, which was ridiculous because she wasn't interested in. "Jayla has probably got her hands full with the move and starting a new job," Cade finished, proud of himself for remembering the conversational details like a responsible parent. "Actually," Iris chimed in, "Mom was just saying this morning how nice it would be to meet some families in the neighborhood." "Weren't you, Mom? You said it was important for us to build connections in our new community." Jayla stared at her daughter. When exactly had she said that? Iris gazed up with wide, hopeful eyes while Claire practically bounced beside her. Their shared expression of innocent expectation made refusal impossible without seeming churlish. "I suppose, if Mr. Bennett's schedule permits, it might be nice for the girls to spend some time together outside of school," Jayla heard herself saying. "Nothing elaborate, of course. Just pizza night," Claire suggested quickly. "Dad makes really good homemade pizza. Much better than his eggs. And we have that big kitchen island where we can all help with toppings." "Pizza night sounds perfect," Cade agreed, even though he couldn't remember the last time he'd made pizza from scratch. How hard could it be? "Friday evening? Around 6? "Friday it is," Jayla confirmed, then immediately began second-guessing herself. This was exactly the kind of complication she'd moved here to avoid. New job, new home, fresh start, those were her priorities. Not getting involved with attractive single fathers who probably had their own complicated histories. As they exchanged phone numbers with practiced parental efficiency, Claire and Iris exchanged meaningful glances behind their backs, small smiles that spoke of plans succeeding perfectly. Claire and Iris had spent their first day of friendship doing far more than getting to know each other. They'd carefully compared notes on their single parents' lives, their loneliness, their tendency to work too much and worry too little about their own happiness. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Your special place in this community of heartfelt stories is waiting for you. These passionate journeys of souls connecting against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful hearts just like yours. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story unfolds in our diary of love. I should get going, Jayla said, glancing at her watch. The parking lot was nearly empty now, and she had grocery shopping to do before their new evening routine could begin. It was nice meeting you, Cade. Likewise, he replied, his voice slightly rougher than he'd intended. There was something about the way she said his name that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with his usual anxiety about Clare making new friends. They walked to their respective cars, daughters chattering excitedly between them, both parents acutely aware of each other's presence. Jayla found herself noting the way Cade's hand rested protectively on Clare's shoulder, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to his daughter. There was a story there, she realized. The kind of story that came with scars and carefully built defenses. Cade, meanwhile, couldn't stop watching the way Jayla moved. Confident but not aggressive, the kind of woman who'd clearly fought for everything she had but hadn't let the fight make her bitter. When she laughed at something Iris said, the sound was warm and genuine, the kind of laugh that suggested she didn't take herself too seriously despite her professional demeanor. Dad, Clare said once they were in the car and Jayla's Honda had disappeared around the corner, I really like Iris. She's funny and smart, and she told me her mom is really good at fixing things around the house. Isn't that cool? Very cool, Cade agreed, starting the engine while trying not to think about what kinds of things Jayla might need fixed in her new home. Or whether offering to help would be appropriate neighbor behavior or crossing a line he'd promised himself he wouldn't cross again. And Dad? I think her mom seems kind of lonely, like you do sometimes when you think I'm not looking. Cade's hand stilled on the steering wheel. Princess, I'm not. It's okay, Dad. I know you miss having someone to talk to besides me and Aunt Natalie. And I think it would be nice if you had a friend who understood about being a single parent. Don't you think that would be nice? There was something in Clare's tone that was too casual, too carefully neutral. Cade glanced in the rearview mirror and caught his daughter's innocent expression, but her eyes held a glint that reminded him uncomfortably of his sister Natalie when she was plotting something. Clare Bennett, exactly how much of today's friendship with Iris was planned? What do you mean, planned? Clare asked, her voice the picture of innocence. I can't help it if Iris and I discovered we have so much in common. Like how we both think our parents work too hard and never take time for fun anymore. Cade pulled into their driveway, suspicion growing stronger. And I suppose it's just a coincidence that you immediately invited her family over for dinner? Dad, you always taught me to be hospitable. I was just being hospitable. As they walked into their house, all gleaming hardwood and carefully chosen furniture that looked beautiful but had never quite felt like home, Cade found himself wondering when his 11-year-old daughter had become so adept at manipulation. And more troubling, why the thought of Friday evening with Jayla Ellis made his pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with parental anxiety. That evening, as Jayla helped Iris organize her new bedroom in their cozy townhouse, she found herself fielding an unusual number of questions about Friday night. Mom, what are you going to wear to Mr. Bennett's house? Jayla looked up from the box of books she was unpacking. Sweetheart, it's just a casual dinner with your friend's family. I'll probably wear jeans and a nice top. But not work clothes, right? Something that shows you're fun? Iris Ellis, where is this coming from? Jayla sat back on her heels, studying her daughter's suddenly interested face. Since when do you care about my wardrobe choices? I just want you to feel comfortable, Iris said, arranging her favorite stuffed animals on the new bed with unusual care. Clare says her dad gets nervous when he meets new people, especially other parents. She thinks it's because her mom left them, and now he worries about letting anyone too close. Jayla's chest tightened with unexpected sympathy. She knew that particular kind of wound intimately, the way betrayal could make you question your own judgment, make you cautious about trusting again. That must have been very difficult for both of them. It was. Clare doesn't talk about it much, but I can tell she worries about her dad being lonely. Kind of like how I worry about you sometimes. Honey, you don't need to worry about me. I'm perfectly fine on my own. Iris fixed her with the kind of direct stare that children use when they see straight through adult pretenses.
Mom, you're amazing and strong and you can do anything. But that doesn't mean you have to do everything alone.
Grandma Rose always said that God gives us people to help carry the load, but we have to be willing to let them. Hearing her mother's words and her daughter's voice made Jayla's throat tighten with emotion. Rose Ellis had been the kind of woman who believed in community, in the power of people taking care of each other. She would have loved this new neighborhood, would have already been planning ways to connect with the neighbors and build relationships.
You're right, baby. Grandma Rose was a wise woman.
Jayla reached over to squeeze Iris's hand. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to make some new friends in our new community. Exactly, Iris said with satisfaction.
And Mom?
Maybe wear that blue sweater that brings out your eyes. Claire mentioned that her dad likes the color blue.
Jayla raised an eyebrow. Did she now? And exactly how did that topic come up in conversation?
Oh, you know how kids talk, Iris replied airily, turning her attention back to her stuffed animals with suspicious focus. As Jayla continued unpacking, she found herself thinking about the brief encounter in the school parking lot. There had been something in Cade Bennett's eyes, a recognition that spoke of shared experiences, shared struggles. The way he'd looked at her hadn't been the calculating assessment she'd grown accustomed to from men who saw her success and wondered what she might offer them. Instead, it had been the look of someone who understood the weight of solo parenting, the careful balance between protecting your child and allowing yourself to hope for something more. She thought about Derek's recent phone calls, his increasingly insistent claims that he'd changed, that he wanted their family back. The divorce would be final in 6 weeks, and she'd been looking forward to that closure. But lately, his persistence had begun to wear down her resolve, making her question whether Iris deserved the chance to have her father more present in her life, regardless of what that might cost Jayla personally. Meeting Cade had reminded her that not all men were like Derek. Some men prioritized their children's well-being over their own comfort.
Some men understood that being a parent meant showing up consistently, not just when it was convenient.
Friday was still 4 days away, but already Jayla found herself anticipating the evening with nervous curiosity that had everything to do with the way Cade Bennett had looked at her, like she was worth seeing.
Part 2. The next few days passed in a blur of new job orientation and settling in routines.
Tuesday morning brought the familiar rhythm of corporate challenges that Jayla had learned to navigate with grace and determination. Her new office overlooked the downtown business district, and she'd spent the first hour simply appreciating the view that represented years of hard work. Regional manager at 36 was no small accomplishment, especially for a woman who'd started as an entry-level coordinator while putting herself through night school.
Her assistant knocked on the open door frame. Ms. Ellis? The quarterly reports you requested, and there's a call holding on line 2. Says it's personal. Jayla's stomach clenched. Only one person called her at work anymore claiming personal privilege. Thank you, Miranda. I'll take it in a few minutes. She knew it was Derek before she picked up the phone. Her ex-husband had a talent for calling at the worst possible moments, usually when she was settling into something good and needed his chaos least. Jayla, baby, thank God you answered. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing space to think. But sweetheart, we can't keep dragging this out. Iris needs her father, and you know I've changed. The real estate market is booming, and I just closed the biggest deal of my career. We could buy that house you always wanted, the one with the big backyard for Iris. Derek, we've discussed this. The papers will be final in 6 weeks, and 6 weeks we could be spending as a family again. Jayla, I made mistakes, but what we had was real. Don't throw that away because of one stupid error in judgment. One error in judgment. That's what he called a 6-month affair with his secretary, conducted in hotels paid for with their joint savings account. Jayla closed her eyes, feeling the familiar tug of exhaustion that Derek's version of reality always brought. I have to go. I'm at work. Just think about it, okay? Think about what's best for Iris. Think about giving us one more chance. After she hung up, Jayla sat in her leather chair, staring at the city skyline. Derek wasn't wrong about Iris needing stability, needing a father figure. But was accepting his return really about what was best for Iris,
or about Derek's fear of paying child support and starting over at 38? Her phone buzzed with a text from Iris. "Mom, Claire says her dad is already planning Friday's menu and he's nervous about impressing us.
She thinks he's been Googling pizza recipes. Isn't that sweet?"
Despite her mood, Jayla smiled. There was something endearing about a successful businessman Googling pizza recipes because he wanted to make a good impression on his daughter's friend. It spoke to the kind of priorities that Derek had never quite grasped. Meanwhile, 3 miles away in his contemporary office space, Cade was indeed researching homemade pizza techniques while pretending to review client proposals. His business partner Trevor Wang had been watching this performance for 20 minutes with growing amusement.
"You know there are actual pizza places that deliver, right?" Trevor finally said, dropping into the chair across from Cade's desk.
"Excellent pizza places that don't require you to stress about dough rising times and cheese distribution patterns. I told Claire I make good homemade pizza," Cade replied without looking up from his laptop screen.
"I'm not backing down from that claim now." "Ah. And this sudden commitment to culinary excellence wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that you mentioned meeting an interesting mother at school pickup yesterday?"
Cade finally looked up, noting Trevor's knowing grin. They'd been business partners for 8 years and friends for longer. Trevor had an annoying talent for reading between lines that Cade preferred to keep private.
"It's a playdate dinner, Trevor. Nothing more complicated than that." "Right.
A playdate dinner that has you Googling how to make pizza dough from scratch and wine pairings for casual dinners."
"Because that's totally normal parent behavior. Since when do you monitor my browser history?"
"Since you started acting like a nervous teenager instead of a guy who regularly presents to Fortune 500 companies without breaking a sweat." Trevor leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself.
"So what's she like, this interesting mother?" Cade closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "She's Claire's friend's mom. She seems nice, professional.
We're having dinner so the girls can spend time together.
That's all." "Aha. And what does Claire think about this nice, professional woman?" "Claire thinks..."
Cade paused, remembering his daughter's enthusiastic commentary from the previous evening. "Claire thinks I should wear my blue shirt on Friday because it brings out my eyes."
Trevor burst out laughing. "Oh man, you're doomed. Your 11-year-old is already styling you for dates."
"This is beautiful."
"It's not a date. It's a neighborly dinner. Keep telling yourself that, buddy.
But maybe also keep Googling those pizza recipes, because if you mess up dinner with the first woman who's caught your attention in 3 years, I'll never let you live it down."
After Trevor left, Cade stared out at the city below, replaying his encounter with Jayla Ellis.
Her obvious beauty aside, something about how she carried herself lingered, confident without aggression, warm yet careful. Someone who'd learned self-protection without bitterness.
He thought about Amanda, about how different his ex-wife had been.
Amanda had been all bright energy and spontaneous decisions, the kind of woman who made life feel exciting and unpredictable. Until the excitement became chaos, and the unpredictability became addiction, and he'd found himself trying to shield Claire from the wreckage of his wife's slow disintegration. Amanda had signed the divorce papers from rehab, relinquishing custody with a mix of relief and self-loathing that had broken his heart even as it saved his daughter's stability. That had been 2 years ago, and since then, Cade had focused entirely on creating the kind of secure, predictable environment that Claire needed to thrive. Dating had seemed like an unnecessary complication, a risk he couldn't afford to take when his daughter's well-being was at stake. But something about Jayla suggested she understood that same protective instinct, that careful balance between hope and caution that defines single parenting. Launched in. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed his sister Natalie's number, which meant she'd either sensed his emotional turmoil from across town or Claire had already briefed her on recent developments. "So," Natalie launched in without preamble, "I hear you're cooking for someone special on Friday." "Claire called you." Claire called me with very detailed descriptions of Iris's mother, including her professional accomplishments, her parenting style, and apparently her really pretty smile that makes Dad act weird.
Her words, not mine.
Cade rubbed his temples.
"Natalie, it's not complicated. Yeah, you keep saying that about everything that might actually make you happy. Cade, when was the last time you did something just because it felt good? When was the last time you let yourself be interested in someone without immediately cataloging all the ways it could go wrong?
When was the last time you dated someone for longer than 3 months? He countered.
Touché. But we're not talking about my commitment issues.
We're talking about the fact that my brother is finally showing signs of life beyond work and single parenting, and I'm not going to let him sabotage it with overthinking.
I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm being realistic about my priorities. Your priorities include your own happiness, right?
Because Claire needs to see that her father is a whole person, not just a caretaker who's sacrificed every personal desire for her well-being. After Natalie hung up, Cade sat in his office trying to focus on actual work, but his mind kept drifting to Friday evening. The truth was, he was nervous in a way that had nothing to do with pizza preparation and everything to do with the possibility that Jayla Ellis might see something in him worth getting to know beyond his role as Claire's father. Thursday afternoon brought an unexpected complication in the form of a phone call that made Cade's blood run cold.
Cade? It's Amanda.
He'd been reviewing quarterly reports when his ex-wife's voice cut through his concentration like a blade. She sounded clearer than she had in years, more like the woman he'd married and less like the stranger addiction had made her become.
Amanda. Where are you calling from? I'm in town.
I know I should have called sooner, but I wanted to make sure I was ready before I reached out. I've been clean for 8 months, Cade.
Really clean this time. I'm working the program, I have a sponsor, and I've been thinking about Clare every single day. Cade's grip tightened on the phone.
They'd been through this before, the promises, the temporary sobriety, the inevitable relapse that left Claire confused and hurt.
What do you want, Amanda? I want to see my daughter. I want to be part of her life again. I know I have to earn that right, but I'm ready to do the work. Whatever it takes. Clare is doing well. She's happy, stable, settled in school.
I won't let you disrupt that.
I'm not asking to disrupt anything.
I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the mother she deserves.
The mother I should have been all along.
There was something in Amanda's voice that Cade hadn't heard in years, genuine remorse mixed with determination. But he'd learned not to trust the early stages of her recovery attempts. The real test wasn't whether she could get clean, it was whether she could stay clean when life became difficult again.
I need time to think about this. And I need to consider what's best for Clare.
Of course.
I understand. But Cade?
I know I destroyed our marriage, and I know I failed as a mother.
But I'm not going to give up on getting my daughter back. Not this time.
After she hung up, Cade sat in his office feeling like the carefully constructed foundation of his life had shifted beneath his feet. Claire barely remembered her mother's last attempts at sobriety. She'd been so young when Amanda left that her memories were more emotional impressions than concrete recollections. How could he explain that the mother she'd idealized might be coming back? How could he protect her from potential disappointment while still allowing for the possibility that Amanda really had changed? That evening, as he helped Claire with her homework at their kitchen island, he found himself studying his daughter's face, looking for signs of the anxiety that always accompanied Amanda's return. But Claire seemed completely focused on her math problems, chattering about her plans for Friday night with unusual enthusiasm. Dad, Iris says her mom is an amazing cook, but she's been too busy with work to do much cooking since they moved.
I think we should make sure our pizza is really special, don't you?
I think our pizza will be just fine, sweetheart.
And Dad? I was thinking maybe we should show them the photo albums after dinner.
You know, the ones with pictures of our family trips and holidays.
Iris would probably like to see how much fun we have together.
There was something in Claire's tone that seemed too deliberate, too carefully planned.
Cade looked up from the math worksheet, studying his daughter's expression.
Claire, exactly what kind of impression are you trying to make on Iris's mother?
What do you mean?
Claire asked, her voice innocent but her eyes holding that telltale glint of mischief. I mean, it sounds like you're trying very hard to present our family in a specific light.
Is there something you want to tell me about your motivations for this dinner?
Claire was quiet for a moment, chewing on her pencil eraser in the way she did when she was deciding how much truth to reveal.
Dad, do you ever get lonely? The question caught him off guard. Sometimes. But I have you, and Aunt Natalie, and Uncle Trevor. I have plenty of people in my life. But do you ever wish you had someone to talk to about grown-up things? Someone who understood about being a parent and having responsibilities, but who wasn't family so you could say things you can't say to me or Aunt Natalie?
Cade set down his pen, giving Clare his full attention.
Sweetheart, what's this really about? I just think you deserve to have friends who get it, you know? And Iris says her mom works really hard, but sometimes she looks sad when she thinks nobody's watching.
Like maybe she's lonely too, even though she's really strong and successful.
And you think your father and Iris's mother might be good friends?
I think you're both really good parents who put your kids first, and maybe that means you understand each other better than most people would. Clare looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too wise for 11 years old.
Is that wrong? No, sweetheart. That's not wrong at all. But as Cade tucked Clare into bed that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his daughter was orchestrating something far more complex than a simple playdate. And more troubling still was the realization that part of him hoped she was right about Jayla Ellis, hoped that tomorrow night might offer the possibility of connection with someone who truly understood the delicate balance of single parenting. The question was whether he was ready for that kind of complication, especially with Amanda's return looming over their carefully constructed piece. Part 3. Friday morning arrived crisp and full of possibility. Jayla stood before her bedroom mirror, holding up 2 different sweaters, the third outfit change for a simple dinner. The blue cashmere Iris had suggested brought out her eyes but felt like trying too hard. The cream cotton was safer, more neutral. "Mom, you look beautiful in both," Iris said from the doorway, "but the blue one makes you look happy." Happy? Jayla examined her reflection more closely. What do you mean? I mean you've been smiling more since we moved here. And especially since you met Mr. Bennett. The blue sweater matches that smile. Jayla studied her daughter's face, noting the pleased expression that suggested Iris was very satisfied with recent developments. Sweetheart, are you matchmaking? I'm just observing, Iris replied with the kind of innocence that fooled no one. Clare and I think you and her dad would be really good friends. You both work hard, you both love your daughters more than anything, and you both deserve to have someone who understands how complicated life can be. Iris Ellis, you are 11 years old. When did you become a relationship counselor? Grandma Rose always said that love finds a way when people stop being too scared to let it. Iris perched on the edge of the bed, swinging her legs. And Mom? I think you've been scared for a really long time. Jayla's hands still on the sweater. Scared, yes, that was exactly right. So focused on building stability and proving her competence that she'd forgotten to consider what her own happiness might look like. You're right, she said finally, choosing the blue sweater. I have been scared. But sometimes being careful is just good sense. And sometimes being careful means missing out on really good things, Iris countered. Clare says her dad is the best dad in the world, but he's been sad for a long time too. Maybe you could be sad together and then figure out how to be happy together. 3 miles away, Cade was having his own wardrobe crisis while fielding advice from his daughter, who had stationed herself in his walk-in closet like a personal stylist with strong opinions. Dad, definitely the blue shirt. It makes your eyes look really blue, and it's not too fancy but it's not too casual either. It says I'm a successful businessman but also a fun dad who knows how to relax. Cade paused in the middle of buttoning the shirt. Clare, where exactly are you getting this fashion psychology? I read a lot, she replied with dignity. And I pay attention to how people dress on TV shows. The good guys always wear clothes that match their personalities. And what exactly is my personality saying tonight? Clare considered this seriously. That you're kind and reliable and really handsome, but you don't know how handsome you are, which makes you even more handsome. And that you're a little nervous but excited, which is perfect because it means you care about making a good impression. When did you become so wise about these things? I've always been wise about these things. You just haven't been ready to listen before.
Clare stepped closer, reaching up to adjust his collar with the careful attention of someone who'd been observing adult behavior longer than adults realized.
Dad, can I ask you something? Always. If you like Iris's mom, and I mean really like her, not just think she's nice, would that be okay? Would it be okay if you wanted to spend time with her even when Iris and I aren't around?
The question caught Cade off guard. He'd been so focused on the logistics of the evening that he hadn't fully considered what he was hoping for beyond getting through dinner without embarrassing himself.
Sweetheart, I barely know Jayla. We've met once, very briefly. But you could get to know her. If you wanted to. And if she wanted to get to know you back. Claire's expression grew more serious. Dad, I know Mom left because she was sick, not because you weren't good enough.
But sometimes I think you forgot that you're still worth loving.
The simple truth of it hit Cade like a physical blow.
Clare had never spoken so directly about Amanda's leaving, about the impact it had on their family's emotional landscape. For his 11-year-old daughter to recognize his struggle with self-worth meant he'd been less successful at hiding his wounds than he'd believed.
Clare. I just want you to know that if you like Iris's mom, it's okay with me. More than okay. I think it would be really good for you to have someone who makes you smile the way you used to smile before Mom got sick.
Cade knelt down so he was at eye level with his daughter, taking her hands in his.
You know I love you more than anything in this world, right? You know that you're the most important thing in my life?
I know that, Dad.
But I also know that loving me doesn't mean you can't love anyone else. Love isn't like money, you don't run out of it when you share it with more people.
The wisdom in her words, delivered with such matter-of-fact certainty, made Cade's chest tighten with pride and gratitude. Somehow, despite Amanda's abandonment and his own protective walls, Clare had grown into a girl who believed in love's abundance rather than its scarcity. By 5:30, both households were in various stages of preparation that had nothing to do with cooking and everything to do with the careful choreography of making good impressions. Cade had successfully made pizza dough from scratch twice, since the first attempt had been too sticky, and had arranged an assortment of toppings that looked casual but had required 2 trips to the gourmet market. Jayla had brought a bottle of wine that cost more than she usually spent on groceries, along with a homemade apple crisp that represented her grandmother's recipe. Her third jewelry change had settled on pearl earrings, her mother's college graduation gift. When the doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock, both families experienced a moment of collective nervousness that had very little to do with the children's anticipation of a playdate. Cade opened the door to find Jayla and Iris standing on his front porch, and the sight of her hit him with unexpected force. The blue sweater brought out the warm undertones in her skin and made her eyes seem even more luminous. She'd left her hair down, and it curved softly around her shoulders in a way that made him want to reach out and touch its texture. There was something about seeing her in his doorway that felt both foreign and familiar, like coming home to a place he'd never been.
"Hi," he said, his voice slightly rougher than intended. "You found us okay?"
"GPS is a wonderful thing," Jayla replied, trying not to notice how the blue shirt made Cade's eyes seem impossibly deep or how his nervous smile transformed his entire face from handsome to devastating.
"Something smells incredible."
"Dad made the pizza dough from scratch," Clare announced proudly, appearing beside her father.
"Twice. The first batch didn't cooperate."
"I like a man who's willing to try again when something doesn't work out the first time," Jayla said, then immediately wondered if the comment sounded as loaded to him as it did to her. The brief moment of eye contact that followed suggested it did. There was something in Cade's expression that spoke of recognition, of understanding that they were both people who'd learned to start over when life demanded it. "Come in, please," he said, stepping aside to let them pass.
"Can I take your coat?"
The simple courtesy of helping with her jacket brought them unexpectedly close. Cade caught her perfumed warm vanilla and amber, his hands lingering on the fabric. Jayla became acutely aware of his height, his quiet strength filling the space around them, making her feel both protected and off balance. "Your home is beautiful," she said, looking around the open-concept living area that managed to feel both sophisticated and comfortable. Everything was clearly expensive but chosen with care rather than for show, and there were enough personal touches, Claire's artwork on the refrigerator, books stacked on coffee tables, a guitar in the corner, to make it feel genuinely lived in.
Thank you. Claire's been redecorating gradually, Cade replied, watching Jayla take in the space.
She has very strong opinions about things like throw pillows and wall colors. Mom says our townhouse is still too beige, Iris chimed in, but she's been too busy with work to add personality to it yet. I brought wine, Jayla said, offering the bottle she'd been clutching perhaps too tightly.
And apple crisp for dessert, if that's not presumptuous.
That's incredibly thoughtful, Cade replied, accepting the wine and noting the careful selection, a Pinot Noir that suggested she'd put thought into pairing it with pizza without being pretentious about it.
An apple crisp sounds perfect.
I have to confess, I was so focused on mastering pizza that I forgot about dessert entirely. Well, that's what teamwork is for, Jayla said, then immediately wondered why she'd used the word teamwork, as if they were already a unit working together rather than two strangers sharing a meal. The girls, meanwhile, had been watching this exchange with barely concealed satisfaction. Clare and Iris exchanged a quick glance that communicated volumes about the success of their orchestration so far.
Dad, why don't you show Ms. Jayla the kitchen while Iris and I set up the toppings?
Clare suggested with the kind of helpful innocence that every parent recognizes as dangerous. I bet she'd like to see how professional your pizza-making setup looks. Before either adult could object, the girls had disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Cade and Jayla alone in the living room with the sudden awareness that they were about to spend an entire evening getting to know each other while pretending the evening was about their daughter's friendship.
So, Cade said, gesturing toward the kitchen, would you like to see my allegedly professional pizza-making setup?
Fair warning, it's possible that Clare has oversold my culinary skills. I'd love to, Jayla replied, following him toward the kitchen and trying not to notice the way his jeans fit or how comfortable he seemed in his own space. There was something appealing about a man who was confident enough to attempt homemade pizza but humble enough to admit he might fail at it. The kitchen was a study in controlled chaos. Flour dusted across the granite countertops, an impressive array of toppings arranged in small bowls, and 2 rounds of pizza dough covered with clean dish towels, rising on the counter. The whole scene spoke of genuine effort and care, the kind of preparation that had nothing to do with showing off and everything to do with wanting to create something special. This is actually very impressive. Jayla traced the edge of a bowl, taking in the variety of ingredients.
You weren't kidding about taking this seriously. I may have gotten carried away. Cade's wine-opening movements betrayed nerves his calm demeanor tried to hide.
I kept thinking about how disappointed Clare would be if I messed up her first real attempt at hosting new friends.
And how disappointed you'd be if you didn't make a good impression on her friend's mother. Jayla asked, accepting the glass of wine he offered and noting the way his fingers brushed hers during the transfer.
The directness of the question caught him off guard, but there was something in her tone that invited honesty rather than polite deflection.
That too, he admitted. It's been a while since I've tried to impress anyone besides Clare. How long is a while?
2 years.
Since my divorce was finalized.
He took a sip of wine, studying her face for any sign of judgment or discomfort. Clare's mother struggled with addiction. The marriage ended when I realized I couldn't save her and protect Clare at the same time. The simple honesty of his answer made Jayla's chest tighten with recognition. There was no self-pity in his voice, no dramatic storytelling designed to elicit sympathy. Just the straightforward acknowledgement of someone who'd made difficult choices and lived with the consequences. I'm sorry, she said simply.
That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you.
It was. But we got through it, and Clare is thriving now.
Sometimes I think she's more emotionally mature than I am. I know that feeling. Iris has been my biggest supporter through my divorce proceedings.
Sometimes I catch her taking care of me when it should be the other way around.
Your divorce is recent? 6 weeks until it's final. My ex-husband cheated, then convinced himself it was a momentary lapse in judgment rather than a fundamental character flaw. Jayla took a larger sip of wine than she'd intended.
He keeps calling, wanting to reconcile, claiming he's changed.
Part of me wonders if I should consider it for Iris's sake. And the other part of you?
The other part of me knows that trust, once broken that badly, doesn't just heal because someone promises it will. They stood there for a moment, wine glasses in hand, both recognizing that they'd moved past small talk into the kind of territory that required careful navigation. There was something powerful about being with someone who understood the weight of single parenting, the careful balance between protecting your child and protecting your own heart.
Dad! Ms. Jayla! Clare called from the dining room.
We have the toppings all ready, and we want to start building pizzas before we starve to death.
Saved by 11-year-old impatience, Cade said with a smile that transformed his entire face.
The best kind of rescue, Jayla agreed, following him toward the dining room and trying not to think about how right it felt to be moving through his home as if she belonged there. The next hour blurred with laughter, cheese distribution debates, and easy conversation. Clare and Iris worked together with the seamless cooperation of old friends, their pizza creations growing increasingly elaborate and ridiculous as they competed to make each other laugh. But underneath the light-hearted dinner conversation, both Cade and Jayla found themselves hyper-aware of each other's presence. When Jayla reached across the table for the olive bowl at the same moment Cade reached for the mushrooms, their hands brushed in a moment of contact that sent electricity up both their arms. When Cade laughed at one of Iris's stories, Jayla found herself studying the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the genuine warmth in his expression when he looked at her daughter. "Ms. Jayla," Clare said during a brief lull in conversation, "Iris told me you're really good at fixing things around the house."
Dad is terrible at anything that requires tools more complicated than a screwdriver.
Clare, Cade protested mildly, "I'm not that hopeless."
Dad, you hired someone to hang a picture frame last month.
It was a very large picture frame, he defended, while Jayla tried not to smile at his embarrassment. And the wall was challenging.
I like fixing things, Jayla said diplomatically.
There's something satisfying about solving problems with your hands instead of your head for a change.
What kind of projects are you avoiding?
The back deck railing has been loose for months, Clare volunteered helpfully. And there's a weird squeaking noise in my bathroom sink that Dad keeps saying he'll look at this weekend. Those are both pretty straightforward fixes, Jayla said, then immediately wondered if she was overstepping.
I mean, if you ever wanted a second opinion or someone to hold the flashlight. You'd really not mind helping with household repairs?
Cade asked, his tone suggesting he found the offer both appealing and slightly unbelievable.
I'd enjoy it.
There's something therapeutic about fixing things that are broken. As soon as the words left her mouth, Jayla realized they could be interpreted as more than just a comment about home maintenance. The moment of charged silence that followed was broken by Iris clearing her throat with theatrical significance.
Mom, didn't you say you wanted to learn more about the neighborhood? And Mr. Bennett, didn't Clare mention that you know all the best local places? Both adults turned to look at their daughters, suddenly aware that they were being managed by 11-year-old relationship consultants who were far more sophisticated than either parent had realized. Are you two scheming? Jayla asked directly.
We're facilitating, Clare replied with dignity.
There's a difference. We just think you should be friends, Iris added.
Really good friends who spend time together and help each other with things and maybe go to dinner sometimes without us.
Without you? Cade raised an eyebrow. And where exactly would you be during these theoretical dinners?
Sleepovers, both girls said simultaneously, then looked at each other and burst into giggles. Jayla and Cade exchanged a look over their daughters' heads, a moment of shared recognition that they'd been expertly outmaneuvered by two children who'd clearly put considerable thought into their matchmaking strategy. Well, Jayla said finally, I have to admire the thoroughness of your planning.
And the optimism, Cade added.
You're assuming your parents will actually like each other enough to want to spend time together without supervision. Oh, we're not assuming anything, Clare said confidently. We're observing. And based on our observations, we think you already like each other quite a lot. As if to prove the girl's point, both adults found themselves blushing simultaneously, a reaction that sent Clare and Iris into fresh peals of delighted laughter. Part 4. After dinner, as they moved to clear the table, an unexpected moment arose that would shift the careful dynamic both adults had been maintaining. Jayla reached for the wine glasses at the same time Cade moved to collect the serving bowls, and suddenly they were standing closer than either had anticipated, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes, close enough that he could count the faint freckles across her nose. I've got these, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I can help, he replied, but neither of them moved to step away.
The moment stretched between them, charged with awareness and possibility.
Jayla found herself studying the way his shirt collar lay against his neck, the slight stubble along his jaw that suggested he'd been too nervous to shave as carefully as usual. Cade couldn't stop looking at her mouth, at the way her lower lip was slightly fuller than the upper one, and how her breath caught just slightly when she realized how intently he was watching her.
Mom, did you drop something?
Iris's voice cut through the tension like a blade. They sprang apart, both reaching for dishes with sudden, unnecessary efficiency. But the moment had happened, and both girls had noticed the electric charge that had passed between their parents. No, sweetheart, just organizing the cleanup, Jayla replied, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal.
Dad, your face is really red, Clare observed with scientific interest. Are you okay? Fine, princess. Just warm from the kitchen.
Clare and Iris exchanged another one of their significant looks. The silent communication between them was becoming more obvious by the hour, and both adults were beginning to suspect they were participants in a much more sophisticated plan than a simple playdate.
Why don't we show them the deck?
Clare suggested brightly. The sunset looks really pretty from out there, and Dad still needs to point out that loose railing to Miss Jayla. Before either adult could object, the girls were herding them toward the sliding glass doors that led to the back deck. The evening air was crisp but not cold, perfect for lingering outside without jackets. The deck overlooked a small private lake that reflected the orange and pink streaks of the sunset, creating the kind of romantic backdrop that seemed almost too convenient to be accidental. It really is beautiful here, Jayla said, moving toward the railing to get a better view of the water.
I can see why you chose this neighborhood.
The lake was actually Claire's deciding factor, Cade replied, joining her at the railing while the girls settled themselves in the deck chairs with the casual air of chaperones. She said she wanted to live somewhere that looked like the places in fairy tales.
Smart girl.
Sometimes the magical-looking places actually turn out to be magical.
As if to demonstrate the railing issue, the section Jayla was leaning against shifted slightly under her weight.
Instinctively, Cade stepped closer, his hand covering hers on the unstable rail, his other arm coming around her waist to steady her. The gesture was protective rather than romantic, but the effect was immediate and overwhelming. Jayla found herself pressed against Cade's solid warmth, acutely aware of his strength, of the way he smelled like soap and something distinctly masculine. His hand covered hers completely, and she could feel the calluses on his palm that suggested he wasn't always the desk-bound businessman he appeared to be. Careful, he said, his voice low and rough.
I should have warned you about that.
I'm okay, she replied, but made no immediate move to step away from his protective embrace. But you definitely need to fix this before someone gets hurt.
I'll add it to the list of projects I keep promising to handle.
They stood there for a moment longer than the situation required, both aware that the loose railing had been more excuse than actual danger. From their vantage point, they had a perfect view of the lake, but neither was paying attention to the scenery. Instead, they were focused on the warmth radiating between them, on the way Jayla fit perfectly against Cade's side, on how right it felt to be standing together watching the sun set over the water.
Wow, Clare said loudly from behind them, her voice filled with exaggerated amazement. You two look like you're posing for a romantic movie poster. A really good romantic movie, Iris added helpfully.
The kind where the music swells and everyone in the audience knows the characters are going to fall in love.
Both adults stepped apart with matching looks of embarrassment, but the damage was done.
The moment of physical closeness had awakened something neither had been prepared for, a longing that went beyond simple attraction into the realm of genuine need. I should probably get Iris home, Jayla said, though her tone suggested she was trying to convince herself as much as announcing her intentions.
It's getting late, and we've imposed on your evening long enough.
You haven't imposed at all, Cade replied quickly.
But if you need to go. Actually, Clare interjected, before you leave, could you look at that bathroom sink? The squeaky one?
It would just take a minute, and then Dad wouldn't have to hire someone for such a simple job. Clare, Cade began, but Jayla was already nodding.
Of course. I'd be happy to take a look. As they trooped back inside and up the stairs to Claire's bathroom, both adults were acutely aware that they were entering more intimate territory.
This wasn't the public space of kitchen and dining room. This was the part of the house where the family's private life unfolded. Claire's bathroom was decorated in soft purples and whites, with photos of her and Cade at various ages covering one wall like a timeline of their life together. Jayla found herself studying the images while running water in the sink to identify the source of the squeak. "You two have quite a history," she observed, noting how Cade's face had changed over the years, growing more serious, more careful, but also more confident in his role as a father. 11 years of adventures," Cade replied, standing closer than necessary to watch her work. "Some easier than others, but we've figured it out as we go." "Single parenting is definitely a learn-as-you-go experience," Jayla agreed, reaching under the sink to locate the shut-off valve. "Half the time I'm convinced I'm doing everything wrong, and the other half I'm amazed that Iris has turned out as well as she is despite my mistakes. From what I can see, you've done an incredible job. Iris is confident, kind, funny, everything you'd want your daughter to be." The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, made Jayla's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Derek had never praised her parenting. He'd been more likely to criticize her methods or suggest that Iris would benefit from a more traditional family structure. Hearing recognition of her success from someone who clearly understood the challenges of solo parenting felt like a gift she hadn't known she needed. "There's your problem," she said, focusing on the plumbing to hide how much his words had affected her. "The washer in this faucet handle is worn. It's a 15-minute fix if you have a basic toolkit." "I have tools," Cade said, though his tone suggested this was a recent and possibly optimistic acquisition. "They're in the garage. I could get them. It's fine for tonight. The squeak isn't going to cause any damage. But I could come back tomorrow and fix it properly, if you want. Bring my own tools and make sure it's done right." The offer hung in the air between them, both understanding that it represented far more than home maintenance assistance. Jayla was suggesting another opportunity to see each other, another excuse to spend time together outside their daughter's orchestrated events. "I'd like that," Cade said simply. "I'd like that a lot." Downstairs, Clare and Iris were having their own conversation that would have fascinated their parents if they'd been able to overhear it. "I think that went really well," Clare said with satisfaction. "Did you see how long they stood together on the deck? And how neither of them wanted to step away? And the way your dad looked at my mom when she was fixing the sink," Iris added. "Like she was amazing and he couldn't believe she was real. Your mom looked at him the same way during dinner when he was talking about his business. Like she thought he was really smart and interesting. So what's our next move?" Iris asked, leaning forward with the intensity of a general planning strategy. "Well, your mom is coming back tomorrow to fix the sink, right?" "That's perfect. We need to make sure they have more time alone together, but not so much that they get nervous and start overthinking everything. What if we had another emergency? Like a homework crisis that requires both parents? Even better, what if there was a school event next week that needed parent volunteers? Something where they'd have to work together on a project? The fall fundraiser," Iris exclaimed. "They always need people to help with decorations and setup. If we both signed our parents up to volunteer, they'd have to spend hours working together," Claire finished with growing excitement. "Perfect. We just have to make sure they think it was their own idea to volunteer." When Cade and Jayla returned from the bathroom expedition, they found their daughters engaged in what appeared to be an innocent discussion about upcoming school events, though both adults were beginning to recognize the signs of tactical planning in their children's behavior. "Ready to head home, sweetheart?" Jayla asked, reaching for her purse while trying not to notice how Cade was looking at her like he wasn't quite ready for the evening to end. "Do we have to?" Iris asked with a theatrical sigh. "Clare and I were just talking about all the fun stuff coming up at school. There's a fall fundraiser next Friday that sounds really exciting. They need lots of parent volunteers," Clare added helpfully. "For decorating and setup and stuff. It would be really fun if both families could help out together." Both adults caught the not-so-subtle manipulation but found themselves considering the suggestion anyway. The evening had been far more enjoyable than either had expected, and the thought of another opportunity to spend time together was appealing despite the obvious orchestration involved.
"We'll see," Jayla said diplomatically. "Right now, we need to let Mr. Bennett have his evening back."
As they gathered coats and said their goodbyes, the front porch provided one more moment of charged awareness. Cade helped Jayla into her jacket again, his hands lingering on her shoulders as he smoothed the fabric into place. The gesture was gentlemanly but intimate, creating another moment of closeness that neither seemed eager to end. "Thank you for dinner," Jayla said, turning to face him while Iris and Clare continued their animated conversation in the background.
"And for the wine, and for making us feel so welcome. Thank you for coming.
For fixing my daughter's sink and making this house feel." He paused, searching for the right words, more like home than it has in a long time. The admission surprised them both with its honesty. Cade hadn't meant to reveal so much about his emotional state, but something about Jayla invited the kind of truth that he usually kept carefully protected. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said softly, "for the sink repair." "Tomorrow," he confirmed, his voice carrying anticipation that had nothing to do with plumbing. As Jayla and Iris walked to their car, both adults stood watching from their respective positions, Cade from his front porch, Jayla from her driver's side window, until the Honda disappeared around the corner. The evening had changed something fundamental in the careful distance both had been maintaining, creating the kind of possibility that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Share your thoughts about taking chances on love after heartbreak. Have you ever found yourself surprised by connection when you least expected it? Tell us about those moments when life brought exactly the person you needed, right when you needed them most. That night, as Cade tucked Clare into bed, she looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too knowing for 11 years old.
"Dad, did you have a good time tonight?"
"I did, princess.
Iris and her mother are lovely people."
"Just lovely?"
Clare pressed, her tone suggesting she was fishing for more specific emotional intel.
"Very lovely," Cade amended, unable to suppress his smile at his daughter's transparency.
"Did you have a good time with your new friend?"
"The best time."
"And Dad?"
"I think Iris's mom really likes you. Like, really really likes you, not just thinks you're nice."
"What makes you say that?"
"The way she looked at you when you weren't looking at her. And the way she offered to come back tomorrow even though she probably has lots of other things to do on Saturdays." Clare was right, Cade realized. Jayla could have easily suggested he hire a handyman or given him instructions to fix the sink himself. Instead, she'd offered to return, to spend more time in his home, to continue whatever was developing between them. "Sweet dreams, princess," he said, kissing her forehead and trying not to think about how much he was looking forward to tomorrow afternoon.
"Dad?"
Clare called as he reached the doorway.
"I'm really proud of you for making a new friend.
You deserve to have people in your life who make you happy." The simple blessing from his daughter made Cade's chest tighten with gratitude and hope. Whatever was happening with Jayla, at least he knew it had Clare's wholehearted approval. Meanwhile, across town, Jayla was having her own bedtime conversation with Iris, who seemed unusually interested in discussing the evening's events.
"Mom, do you think Mr. Bennett is handsome?"
"I think he's a very nice-looking man," Jayla replied carefully, folding laundry with perhaps more attention than the task required.
"But do you think he's handsome in a way that makes you want to look at him more than you should?"
Jayla stopped folding and stared at her daughter.
"Iris Ellis, where on earth did you learn to ask questions like that?"
"I observe things," Iris replied with dignity.
"And I observed that you looked at Mr. Bennett a lot tonight. More than you look at other dads when we're at school events. He's Claire's father and our host. It's polite to pay attention when someone is speaking."
"Mom, you were paying attention when he wasn't speaking too. Like when he was helping you with your coat, and when he caught you at the railing, and when he was watching you fix the sink." The accuracy of her daughter's observations was both impressive and slightly alarming. If Iris had noticed the charged moments between them, they'd been far less subtle than Jayla had hoped. "Sweetheart, Mr. Bennett and I barely know each other."
"But you want to know him better, don't you?"
The direct question deserved an honest answer, even if Jayla wasn't entirely ready to give it to herself, let alone her 11-year-old daughter. "I think he's a good man and a devoted father," she said finally.
And yes, I'd like to get to know him better as a friend. Just as a friend? Iris, what exactly are you hoping for here?
Iris sat up in bed, her expression growing serious.
I'm hoping you'll let yourself be happy, Mom. Really happy, not just proud of your accomplishments, happy or glad that I am doing well, happy. I want you to have the kind of happiness that makes you smile for no reason and hum when you're cooking dinner.
The wisdom in her daughter's words made Jayla's throat tighten with emotion.
When had Iris become so perceptive about adult emotions? When had she started worrying about her mother's happiness in such sophisticated terms? I am happy, sweetheart. You're content, Iris corrected gently. But content isn't the same thing as happy.
Grandma Rose used to say that contentment is what you feel when life is stable, but happiness is what you feel when life is full of love. Hearing her mother's philosophy delivered in her daughter's voice made Jayla realize how much Iris had absorbed during those precious years with her grandmother. Rose Ellis had been a woman who believed deeply in love's power to transform ordinary moments into extraordinary ones, and apparently she'd passed that belief on to her granddaughter.
You miss Grandma Rose, don't you?
Jayla said, settling on the edge of the bed.
Every day. But I think she'd really like Mr. Bennett.
She always said the best men are the ones who put their children first, but don't forget they're allowed to want things for themselves too.
When did you become so wise about relationships? I've been watching you for 11 years, Iris replied simply. I know what makes you light up and what makes you shut down. Mr. Bennett makes you light up, Mom.
And tomorrow, when you go fix his sink, you're going to light up even more.
That night, both households settled into sleep with thoughts that had nothing to do with rest and everything to do with possibility.
Cade found himself lying awake thinking about the way Jayla had moved through his home with such natural ease, how she'd complimented Clare without condescension, how competent and graceful she'd been with everything from dinner conversation to sink repair. Jayla stared at her bedroom ceiling, replaying the moment on the deck when Cade's arm had come around her waist, how solid and warm he'd felt, how safe she'd been in his protective embrace. It had been years since a man had made her feel delicate and feminine without making her feel weak or diminished. Both were beginning to understand that their daughter's matchmaking scheme was working precisely because it had identified something real, a genuine compatibility that went beyond simple attraction into the realm of actual connection.
Saturday afternoon arrived crisp and promising.
Jayla had changed clothes twice before settling on jeans and a soft burgundy sweater that Iris had deemed perfect for looking pretty while doing helpful things. She'd packed her toolkit with more care than any home repair project had ever warranted, adding extra supplies she probably wouldn't need and double-checking that everything was organized and professional-looking. When she rang the Bennett doorbell at 2 o'clock, Cade answered wearing jeans and a gray Henley that clung to his shoulders in a way that made Jayla momentarily forget why she was there. His hair looked like he'd run his fingers through it, and there was something about his slightly nervous energy that suggested he'd been anticipating her arrival as much as she'd been anticipating coming. Right on time, he stepped aside to let her in.
Claire's at Madison's for the afternoon, so we won't have 11-year-old supervision. Probably for the best, Jayla tried not to read too much into being alone together. Some jobs require adult focus. Can I get you coffee? Water? Something stronger? Coffee would be perfect. While Cade prepared coffee, Jayla studied family photos scattered throughout the living space, father and daughter through the years, adventures and milestones preserved with devoted attention. She's grown up beautiful, Jayla observed, noting how Claire's face had matured. She's the best thing I've ever done. Cade returned with coffee. Everything else feels secondary to getting that right. I understand that completely. Sometimes I wonder if I'm too focused on Iris, if I should be modeling a more balanced life for her. What would balance look like? I don't know. Maybe having interests and relationships that don't revolve entirely around being her mother. Maybe showing her that it's possible to be a devoted parent and still have a life of your own. They were venturing into the kind of conversation that required careful navigation, acknowledging the possibility of personal happiness without overstepping the bounds of their careful friendship. Shall we tackle that sink? Jayla asked, setting down her coffee and reaching for her toolkit. Lead the way. Working together in the small space of Claire's bathroom created an intimacy that neither had anticipated.
Jayla knelt beside the vanity to access the plumbing while Cade handed her tools and held the flashlight, their movements requiring a coordination that brought them frequently into close proximity. "There," she said finally, turning the faucet handle to test her repair work. The squeak was gone, replaced by smooth, quiet operation.
"That should solve your problem." "Amazing," Cade said, genuinely impressed. "Where did you learn to do that?"
"My dad," Jayla replied, cleaning her hands with the wipes from her kit.
"He insisted that everyone in the family should know basic maintenance skills.
Said it was important to be self-sufficient but also important to know when to ask for help."
"Smart man."
"He was. I lost him when Iris was 6, but she still remembers how he could fix anything and make it look easy." The mention of her father brought a shadow of sadness across Jayla's features, and Cade found himself wanting to offer comfort, to somehow ease the pain that still lingered in her voice when she spoke of loss.
"I'm sorry," he said simply. "That must have been devastating."
"It was. But it also taught me that life is unpredictable, that you can't wait for the perfect moment to appreciate what you have." She looked up at him, noting how close they were standing in the small bathroom space.
"Sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them."
The words hung between them, loaded with meaning that went far beyond sink repair or family history. They were standing close enough that Cade could see the flecks of amber in her brown eyes, close enough that Jayla could count the laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of someone who'd found reasons to smile despite life's challenges. "Jayla," he said softly, his voice carrying a question he wasn't sure he had the right to ask.
"Yes? Would you like to stay for dinner?"
"Nothing elaborate, just more time together. Without 11-year-old chaperones planning our conversation topics." The invitation was simple but loaded with significance. Dinner alone together would shift their relationship from convenient friendship into something more intentional, more deliberate. "I'd like that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper.
"I'd like that very much."
As they made their way back downstairs, both were acutely aware that they'd crossed an invisible line. The careful distance they'd been maintaining was dissolving, replaced by the kind of anticipation that comes with acknowledging mutual attraction. The afternoon stretched into evening as they cooked together in Cade's kitchen, their movements developing the kind of synchronicity that suggested natural compatibility. Jayla chopped vegetables while Cade prepared salmon, their conversation flowing easily between shared parenting experiences and personal stories they'd never told anyone outside their families. "Derek called again yesterday," Jayla found herself saying as they worked. "He's getting more insistent about reconciliation, more convinced that I'm making a mistake by moving forward with the divorce."
Cade's hands stilled on the salmon he'd been seasoning. "What do you think?"
"I think he's scared of starting over at 38. I think he's realized that reliable, stable women who understand his career demands don't grow on trees." She paused, setting down her knife. "But I also think part of me wonders if I should consider it for Iris's sake. Whether she deserves the chance to have her father more present in her life."
"And what does Iris think?"
"She says she's happier now than she's been in years. Says she likes having a mom who doesn't cry when she thinks no one is looking."
The honesty of the admission hung between them.
Cade turned to face her completely, his expression serious.
"Jayla, you don't owe Derek a second chance because he's finally realized what he lost.
And you don't owe Iris a broken home held together by obligation rather than love."
"I know that intellectually. But knowing it and feeling it are different things. What do you feel when you think about taking him back?"
Jayla considered the question seriously, recognizing that Cade was offering her something Derek never had the space to explore her own emotions without pressure or judgment.
"Tired," she said finally.
"I feel tired at the thought of trying to rebuild trust with someone who broke it so completely. I feel like I'd be settling for less than I deserve because it's easier than believing I might find something better."
"And what would better look like?"
The question was dangerous territory, but the wine they'd shared with dinner and the intimacy of cooking together had lowered both their defenses. "Better would be someone who saw my strength as attractive rather than threatening. Someone who wanted to build something with me rather than asking me to rebuild something that was fundamentally broken." She looked directly at him. "Someone who understood that partnership means supporting each other's growth rather than asking someone to shrink themselves to fit into a smaller life." The words created a charged silence between them. Both understood that she wasn't speaking hypothetically anymore, she was describing what was developing between them. "That doesn't sound like too much to ask," Cade said quietly.
"Doesn't it? Sometimes I wonder if I'm being unrealistic, expecting too much from relationships because I've gotten used to handling everything myself. Independence isn't a flaw, Jayla. It's one of the things that makes you." He paused, searching for the right words. Extraordinary. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, made her pulse flutter. When was the last time someone had seen her independence as a positive trait rather than something that needed to be managed or diminished? "Thank you," she said simply, but her voice carried emotional weight that suggested his words had touched something deep. They finished cooking in comfortable silence, both processing the conversation and what it meant for the careful boundaries they'd been maintaining. As they sat down to eat, the dining room felt different than it had the night before. More intimate, charged with the possibility of something real developing between them. The evening was shifting into something neither had planned but both had been hoping for, the kind of authentic connection that happens when two people stop protecting themselves long enough to see what might be possible. Part 5. Sunday morning brought the kind of rude awakening that reminded Jayla why she'd been so careful about protecting her heart. Derek's car was parked in her driveway when she and Iris returned from grocery shopping, and her ex-husband was leaning against the driver's side door with the casual confidence of someone who believed he belonged there. "Mom," Iris said quietly, her voice carrying the tension that always accompanied her father's unexpected appearances. "Did you know he was coming?" "No, sweetheart. I didn't." Derek straightened as they approached, his real estate agent's smile firmly in place. He looked good tanned, well-dressed, successful, and Jayla knew he was counting on that visual impact to reinforce his argument about reconciliation. "There are my beautiful girls," he said, opening his arms as if expecting embraces that neither Jayla nor Iris moved to provide. "Jayla, you look incredible. This new neighborhood agrees with you." "Derek, what are you doing here?" "You're supposed to call before." I know. But I was in the area showing properties, and I thought it would be nice to see where my family is living." He gestured toward the townhouse with proprietorial interest. "Nice place. A little small for what we could afford together, but nice." Iris stepped closer to her mother, a movement that didn't go unnoticed by any of them. Derek's smile faltered slightly at his daughter's obvious reluctance to engage with him. "Iris, honey, how's the new school? Making friends?" "It's good," Iris replied politely but without enthusiasm. "I have a really good friend named Clare, and her dad is teaching me about different kinds of trees that grow around the lake." "Her dad?" Derek's tone sharpened slightly. "You're spending time with other fathers?" "Mr. Bennett is Claire's dad," Iris explained with exaggerated patience. "When Claire and I have playdates, sometimes the parents talk to each other. That's how parenting works." Jayla bit back a smile at her daughter's matter-of-fact explanation, but Derek's expression was growing more skeptical. "Well, I'm sure this Mr. Bennett is a nice neighbor, but you don't need random men teaching you about trees when your actual father is right here." "You weren't right here when I wanted to learn about trees," Iris pointed out with devastating honesty. "You were busy with work. Or with Tracy." The mention of Derek's former secretary, the woman he'd had an affair with, created a moment of uncomfortable silence. Derek's jaw tightened, and Jayla could see him struggling to maintain his persuasive demeanor. "Iris, sweetheart, Daddy made mistakes, but I'm here now. I want to be part of your life again, part of both your lives. Can we go inside?" Jayla asked, juggling grocery bags and trying to navigate the conversation away from potentially hurtful territory. "If you want to talk, Derek, we should do it privately." As they moved toward the front door, Derek's attention was caught by something in the neighboring driveway. An older woman with silver hair and warm brown skin was tending to fall mums in ceramic pots, but she was clearly listening to their conversation with the alert interest of someone who cared about her neighbor's well-being. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Iris called out, breaking away from her parents to wave at the woman. "How are your flowers doing?" "Beautiful as ever, Mija," Ruby Rodriguez replied, her voice carrying the affection of someone who'd quickly grown fond of her new neighbors. And how was your dinner with the Bennett family on Friday? You were so excited about it.
Derek's head snapped toward Jayla with sudden, sharp attention.
Dinner? What dinner? Claire's family invited us for pizza, Iris explained innocently. It was really fun.
Mr. Bennett made homemade dough, and Mom fixed their bathroom sink, and we all laughed a lot.
Your mother fixed their sink?
Derek's voice carried disbelief and something sharper, territorial irritation that Jayla was providing domestic services to another man. She's really good at fixing things, Iris continued, oblivious to the tension she was creating.
Mr. Bennett was really impressed.
He said Mom was amazing and he couldn't believe how talented she is. Ruby Rodriguez was watching this exchange with the alert interest of someone who understood family dynamics and didn't like what she was seeing. She'd lived long enough to recognize the signs of a man trying to reclaim something he'd given up the right to claim.
Iris, why don't you take the groceries inside? Jayla suggested, handing her daughter the bags. Derek and I need to have a conversation. Once Iris was inside, Derek's facade of pleasant cooperation dropped completely. So you're already playing house with the neighbors? Jesus, says Jayla, we're not even officially divorced yet, and you're fixing sinks for other men?
I helped a neighbor with a simple repair.
Nothing more complicated than that. Right.
And I suppose this neighbor just happened to need your specific skill set, and you just happened to be available to help him out.
How convenient.
Jayla felt the familiar exhaustion that came with Derek's ability to twist innocent situations into evidence of her supposed failings.
Derek, what do you want? I want my family back.
I want us to stop this ridiculous charade and remember what we built together.
Iris needs stability, needs both her parents under one roof. Iris is perfectly stable. She's thriving, actually. With help from random single fathers who are clearly interested in more than neighborly friendship?
Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to the persuasive tone he used with reluctant clients.
Come on, Jayla. You're a beautiful, successful woman.
Of course this guy is interested.
But do you really think he's looking for anything more than a convenient relationship with someone who can fix his house and entertain his daughter?
The words hit their target with surgical precision.
Derek had always known exactly where to press. Jayla's newfound confidence wavered. What if Cade did see her as convenient rather than special? That's not, we're just friends. Friends who have intimate dinners and home repair sessions.
Jayla, you're smarter than this.
Don't let some smooth-talking guy take advantage of your loneliness. I'm not lonely. Aren't you?
You moved to a new town where you don't know anyone, started a demanding new job, and immediately attached yourself to the first available father figure who showed you attention.
That sounds like loneliness to me. Ruby Rodriguez had heard enough.
She set down her gardening tools and walked purposefully toward the property line, her expression carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years managing middle school children and their parents. Excuse me, she said, her voice polite but firm. I couldn't help but notice that your conversation is getting rather heated, and I'm concerned about young Iris overhearing upsetting things.
Derek turned toward her with irritation.
This is a private family conversation. And I'm a concerned neighbor who's watched Iris and her mother settle into this community with nothing but grace and kindness.
If you're going to continue raising your voice, I'll have to ask you to move your discussion somewhere else. Look, lady. Mrs. Rodriguez, Ruby corrected firmly. And I've been watching families navigate difficult situations for longer than you've been alive, young man. I recognize manipulation when I see it.
The directness of her statement caught Derek off guard. He was accustomed to charming older women, to using his professional polish to win allies. Ruby Rodriguez was clearly immune to his particular brand of persuasion. I think you've said what you came to say, Jayla interjected, feeling grateful for Ruby's intervention but also embarrassed that her personal drama was playing out in front of neighbors.
Iris and I are doing well here. We're building a good life. With help from your handyman boyfriend?
Cade Bennett is a respected member of this community, Ruby said before Jayla could respond. He's raised his daughter with integrity and kindness, and anyone who suggests otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. The defense of Cade, delivered with such certainty by someone who barely knew her, made Jayla realize how much her new community had already embraced both her and Iris. They weren't the outsiders Derek was trying to make them feel like. They belonged here. "I should go," Derek said, recognizing that he'd lost control of the narrative.
"But Jayla, think about what I said. Think about what's best for Iris in the long run."
After he drove away, Ruby lingered by the property line, her expression concerned.
"Nija, are you all right?"
That man has the energy of someone who doesn't hear no very often.
"I'm fine. Thank you for stepping in, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I've seen too many good women talked out of their happiness by men who mistake manipulation for persuasion." Ruby studied Jayla's face with shrewd kindness. "Cade Bennett is a good man, in case you're wondering.
He's been raising that little girl with more love and attention than most two-parent families manage.
If he's showing interest in you, it's because he sees something special, not because he needs a handyman."
"How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched him turn down every available woman in this neighborhood for the past 2 years. Church ladies, PTA mothers, the divorced teacher who lives 3 streets over, they've all tried, and he's been politely uninterested in all of them."
He looks at differently.
"He barely knows me." Sometimes the heart recognizes what the mind hasn't figured out yet. Ruby gathered her gardening tools with the efficiency of someone ready to dispense final wisdom. "Don't let fear or old wounds talk you out of something that could be beautiful, Nija. Life is too short to choose loneliness because it feels safer than taking a chance on love." That evening, as Jayla helped Iris with homework, she found herself struggling to focus on math problems because Derek's words kept echoing in her mind.
Was she being naive about Cade's motivations? Was she reading more into their connection than actually existed?
"Mom, you're distracted," Iris observed, looking up from her multiplication worksheet.
"Are you thinking about Dad's visit?"
"A little."
"How did you feel about seeing him today?" Iris considered the question with the seriousness she brought to important topics.
"Sad, mostly. Not because I missed him, but because he still doesn't understand why we're happier without him."
"What do you mean?" "He thinks we need him to be complete, but we don't. We're already complete.
And if we're going to add someone else to our family, it should be someone who makes us even happier, not someone who makes us feel like we're not enough on our own." The wisdom in her daughter's words took Jayla's breath away. At 11, Iris had grasped something about healthy relationships that many adults never learned, that the best partnerships enhanced rather than completed, that love should add joy rather than fill emptiness.
"And do you think Mr. Bennett makes us happier?"
"I think he makes you smile in a way that reaches your eyes," Iris replied. "And I think he looks at you like you're amazing just as you are, not like you need to be fixed or managed or improved."
That night, Jayla lay awake contrasting Derek's visit with her evening with Cade.
Derek catalogued her failures, found her independence threatening. Cade complimented her competence, seemed genuinely impressed by her capability. Meanwhile, across town, Cade was having his own sleepless night for entirely different reasons. Clare had returned from her playdate full of information about Iris's father's unexpected visit, information she'd gathered with the investigative skills of a trained journalist.
"Madison's mom said there was drama in Iris's driveway today," Clare reported over dinner. "Iris's dad showed up uninvited and seemed really upset."
"That must have been difficult for Iris," Cade replied carefully, trying to extract information without seeming too interested in Jayla's personal business.
"Madison's mom also said Mrs. Rodriguez had to tell him to lower his voice because he was being loud and inappropriate." Clare paused dramatically. "Do you think Iris's dad is trying to get back together with her mom?" The question hit Cade like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on the growing connection between himself and Jayla that he hadn't fully considered the possibility that her ex-husband might actively pursue reconciliation. "I don't know, sweetheart. That's their family's private business."
"But if he is trying to get back together with her, and if she says yes, then Iris might move away, and I'd lose my best friend, and you'd lose." Clare paused, studying her father's face with concern.
"Dad, you look really worried." "I'm not worried.
I'm just concerned about Iris and her mother having to deal with difficult situations."
You like her, don't you? Iris's mom.
You like her as more than just a friend. The direct question from his 11-year-old daughter forced Cade to confront feelings he'd been trying to manage carefully.
I think she's a remarkable woman. But do you like her? The way grown-ups like each other when they want to be together all the time?
Claire. Because if you do, and if her ex-husband is trying to win her back, maybe you should tell her how you feel before it's too late. It's not that simple, princess. There are a lot of complicated factors involved when adults have feelings for each other.
Like what?
Like the fact that we've known each other for less than a week. Like the fact that she's dealing with a divorce and starting a new job and probably doesn't need the complication of someone else's emotions. Or maybe she needs to know that someone sees how amazing she is and wants to build something new with her instead of trying to fix something that was already broken. The insight, delivered with characteristic 11-year-old directness, made Cade realize that his daughter understood the situation more clearly than he'd been willing to admit to himself. He was falling for Jayla Ellis, and Derek's return to the picture represented a threat to possibilities he'd only just begun to imagine.
What do you think I should do? He asked, genuinely curious about his daughter's perspective.
I think you should call her.
Tonight.
And tell her that whatever her ex-husband said today, it doesn't change the fact that you think she's incredible and you want to keep getting to know her better.
That might be overstepping. Dad, sometimes overstepping is just another word for being brave.
By 10 o'clock, Cade had picked up his phone to call Jayla 6 different times, and 6 times he'd set it down without dialing. The rational part of his mind insisted that reaching out so soon after Derek's visit would seem possessive or presumptuous. But the part of his mind that had been awakened by Jayla's laugh, by her competence, by the way she'd fit so naturally into his home and his daughter's affections, was desperate to make sure she knew that not all men saw her strength as a threat. Finally, at 10:30, he compromised by sending a text, "I hope you and Iris are doing okay after today's unexpected visitor. If you need anything, even just someone to listen, I'm here."
The message was simple, supportive, non-invasive.
It offered help without demanding anything in return, exactly the kind of approach that Derek had never mastered.
Jayla's phone buzzed as she was finally drifting toward sleep.
She read Cade's message twice, feeling some of the tension from Derek's visit dissolve at the simple kindness of the gesture. Here was someone offering support without expecting anything in return, someone who understood that sometimes the best help was just knowing you weren't alone.
She typed back, "Thank you. That means more than you know. Iris and I are fine, but it's nice to know we have a friend who cares."
The word friend felt insufficient for what was developing between them, but it was safe, neutral ground that didn't require either of them to define feelings that were still taking shape.
Cade's response came quickly, "Always."
That single word carried weight that had nothing to do with neighborly courtesy and everything to do with growing commitment that was taking root in both their hearts.
Part 6. The week following Derek's surprise visit brought an unexpected complication that would test everything Cade and Jayla were building together.
Wednesday afternoon, as Cade reviewed quarterly reports in his office, his phone rang with a number he hadn't seen in months but recognized immediately.
"Cade? It's Amanda."
His ex-wife's voice sounded different, clearer, more focused than it had in years. But Cade had learned not to trust the early stages of Amanda's recovery attempts.
"Amanda. Where are you?" "I'm here. In town."
"I've been clean for 9 months this time, Cade."
"Really clean?" "I'm working the program, I have a sponsor, and I've been thinking about Clare every single day." Cade's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I want to see my daughter. I want to be part of her life again. I know I have to earn that right, but I'm ready to do the work. Whatever it takes."
Through his office window, Cade could see the school where Clare was spending her afternoon in art club, blissfully unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to be shaken. She barely remembered her mother's last attempts at sobriety. She'd been so young when Amanda left that her memories were more emotional impressions than concrete recollections.
"Clare is doing well, Amanda.
She's happy, stable, settled. I won't let you disrupt that."
"I'm not asking to disrupt anything.
I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the mother she deserves."
"The mother I should have been all along." You've said that before. I know. But this time is different.
I've been sober for 9 months, Cade. 9 months of meetings, therapy, real work on myself.
I've got a job, an apartment, a life that doesn't revolve around the next fix.
There was something in Amanda's voice that Cade hadn't heard in years, genuine remorse mixed with determination. But he'd learned not to trust promises made in early recovery, no matter how sincere they sounded.
I need time to think about this. And I need to consider what's best for Clare.
Of course.
But Cade? I'm not giving up this time.
I know I destroyed our marriage, and I know I failed as a mother.
But I'm not going to give up on getting my daughter back.
After Amanda hung up, Cade sat in his office feeling like the foundation of his carefully constructed life had shifted beneath his feet.
How could he explain to Clare that the mother she'd idealized might be coming back? How could he protect her from potential disappointment while still allowing for the possibility that Amanda really had changed? More troubling still was the realization that Amanda's return would complicate everything that was developing with Jayla. How could he pursue a relationship when his family situation was about to become infinitely more complex?
That evening, as Clare worked on homework at the kitchen island, Cade found himself studying her face, looking for signs of the anxiety that always accompanied changes in their routine. "Dad, you're acting weird," Clare observed, looking up from her math problems. "You keep staring at me like you're trying to memorize my face or something."
"Just thinking about how fast you're growing up." "Is this about the school fundraiser on Friday?"
"Because I already told Iris that we're both volunteering to help with decorations, and her mom said she'd be there too."
"It's going to be fun." The mention of Jayla sent a pang through Cade's chest.
He'd been looking forward to the fundraiser all week, anticipating another opportunity to spend time with her in a relaxed setting. Now Amanda's return cast a shadow over everything, making him question whether it was fair to encourage deeper feelings when his own situation was so uncertain.
"Sweetheart, can I ask you something?"
"Always."
"Do you ever think about your mother? Wonder what she's doing, whether she's okay?"
Claire's pencil stilled in her hand. Her mother was a topic they rarely discussed directly, by mutual unspoken agreement.
Amanda's addiction and abandonment were painful subjects that neither father nor daughter was eager to explore.
"Sometimes," Clare said carefully.
"But mostly I try not to, because thinking about her makes me sad and confused." "Sad about what?"
"Sad that she loved drugs more than she loved us. Confused about whether that was because we weren't enough to make her want to get better, or because addiction is stronger than love." The wisdom in her 11-year-old assessment made Cade's chest tighten with both pride and heartbreak. Clare had clearly been thinking about these issues more deeply than he'd realized.
"Addiction is stronger than love, sweetheart. It's a disease that makes people do things they wouldn't normally do, make choices that hurt the people they care about most." "I know that's what you're supposed to say.
But sometimes I wonder if she would have tried harder to get clean if she'd loved me more."
"Clare, look at me."
Cade waited until his daughter met his eyes. "Your mother's addiction had nothing to do with how much she loved you."
"Nothing.
She left because staying would have meant continuing to hurt you, and even in her sickness, she couldn't bear to do that anymore."
"Then why didn't she get better and come back?"
The question every child of an addicted parent asked, and the one that had no satisfactory answer. Because addiction is complicated, and recovery is hard, and sometimes people can't find their way back no matter how much they want to. Clare was quiet for a long moment, processing this conversation that felt different from their usual careful discussions about her mother.
"Dad, is there something you're not telling me? About Mom?"
Cade felt his throat tighten at his daughter's perceptiveness. She'd always been intuitive about emotional undercurrents, always quick to sense when something was shifting in their carefully maintained world. "Your mother called today," he said finally. "She says she's been sober for 9 months and wants to see you." The pencil fell from Claire's hand, clattering onto the granite countertop. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hope, fear, confusion, before settling into something that looked far too mature for an 11-year-old. "What did you tell her?"
"I told her I needed to think about it, and that I needed to talk to you about what you wanted." "What I want?"
Claire's voice was small, uncertain.
I don't know what I want.
I used to dream about her coming back, but now I'm scared that if she comes back and then leaves again, it'll hurt even worse than before. Cade moved around the kitchen island to pull his daughter into his arms, feeling her small body tremble against his chest.
Hey. Nothing has to be decided right now. We'll figure this out together, okay? Whatever happens, whatever we decide, I'll be right here with you. Promise? Promise.
That night, as Cade tucked Clare into bed, she looked up at him with eyes that seemed to hold too much worry for someone her age.
Dad, if Mom comes back and wants to be a family again, what happens to Iris and her mom? The question hit Cade like a physical blow.
In all his worry about protecting Clare from potential disappointment, he hadn't fully considered how Amanda's return might affect his growing feelings for Jayla. But Clare, with her 11-year-old clarity, had immediately grasped the implications.
Sweetheart, your mother and I aren't getting back together. That's not what this is about. But if she's better now, and if she wants to be my mom again, wouldn't it be better for me to have both my real parents? Family isn't just about biology, Clare. It's about love and commitment and showing up every day. The people who've been here for you, who've supported you and cared for you, those are your real family members. Like you and Aunt Natalie and Uncle Trevor? Exactly.
And like new friends who come into our lives and make them better.
Like Iris and her mom? Yes, like Iris and her mom.
Clare was quiet for a moment, clearly processing complex emotions and adult realities that she shouldn't have to navigate at her age.
Dad, I think I want to see her. Not because I want her to come back and be my mom again, but because I want to see if she's really different. And I want to tell her that I'm okay, that we're okay, so she doesn't have to feel guilty anymore.
The maturity in her statement made Cade's chest swell with pride even as his heart broke for the childhood innocence his daughter had lost to Amanda's addiction.
We can arrange that, if you're sure that's what you want. I'm sure. But Dad? I also want you to know that even if she's really better this time, it doesn't change the fact that you've been the best parent anyone could ask for. And it doesn't change the fact that I want you to be happy with someone who makes you smile the way Miss Jayla does. Friday evening brought the school fundraiser Clare and Iris had orchestrated for weeks.
The gymnasium sparkled with autumn decorations and twinkling lights, filled with families enjoying small-town magic. But Cade arrived with emotions in turmoil, Amanda's call casting shadows over everything he'd anticipated. He spotted Jayla immediately, working with a group of parents to arrange silent auction displays. She was wearing dark jeans and a soft cream sweater that made her skin glow under the warm lighting, her hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the elegant line of her neck. When she laughed at something another parent said, the sound carried across the room and made Cade's chest tighten with longing and regret. "Dad, you look like someone died," Clare observed, tugging on his jacket sleeve.
Are you going to tell Miss Jayla about the phone call, or are you going to spend the whole evening staring at her like a sad puppy? I'm not staring like a sad puppy. You totally are.
And she keeps looking over here like she's wondering why you're acting weird.
Clare was right.
Jayla had noticed his subdued demeanor and was casting concerned glances in their direction while maintaining conversations with other volunteers. "Maybe I should just enjoy the evening and deal with complicated things later," Cade said, more to himself than to his daughter. "Or maybe you should be honest with someone who obviously cares about you," Clare countered with the directness that she'd inherited from him.
She's not Dad. She's not going to run away just because life gets complicated. You don't know that.
I know that she fixed our sink even though she barely knew us. I know that she brought homemade apple crisp to our house and asked about your business like she was really interested. I know that she looks at you like you're someone special, not someone she has to manage or fix."
The accuracy of Clare's observations was both comforting and terrifying.
Jayla did look at him differently than Amanda ever had, with appreciation rather than expectation, with respect rather than resentment. Across the room, Jayla was having her own internal debate about whether to approach Cade or respect the distance he seemed to be maintaining. She'd noticed his subdued mood the moment he'd arrived, and every instinct was telling her that something was wrong.
"Mom, just go talk to him." Iris appeared beside her with matter-of-fact certainty. "He looks like he needs someone to remind him that good things don't have to be scary." "Sweetheart, if Mr. Bennett wanted to talk to me, he would have come over already.
Or maybe he doesn't want to burden people with his problems, even when they obviously want to help. The insight made Jayla realize her daughter had been observing adult behavior with sophisticated understanding that most people underestimated in children.
When did you become so wise about relationships? I've been watching you for 11 years, Mom.
I know the difference between someone who's avoiding you because they don't care and someone who's avoiding you because they care too much to want to hurt you. Sometimes love means reaching out when someone is pulling away, not because they don't want you close, but because they're afraid of dragging you into their storms.
Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you cared about and being honest about your own needs?
Tell us about those moments when loving someone meant being brave enough to stay, even when they were giving you reasons to leave. By 8 o'clock, Cade had successfully avoided meaningful conversation with Jayla for over an hour, but his daughter and Iris had been working behind the scenes to create opportunities for their parents to connect. When the girls volunteered to help with cleanup in the art room, they deliberately arranged for both adults to end up sorting supplies in the same small space. "This feels like a setup," Jayla observed as she and Cade found themselves alone in the art room, surrounded by boxes of markers and construction paper. "My daughter has been unusually invested in my social life lately," Cade admitted, grateful for the opening to address the elephant in the room. "I think she's worried I'm going to sabotage the first good thing that's happened to us in years."
"Is that what you're doing? Sabotaging?"
The direct question forced Cade to look at her properly for the first time all evening. Up close, he could see the concern in her eyes, the way she was studying his face for clues about his emotional state. "I'm trying to be realistic about what I can offer someone," he said carefully.
"My life is complicated right now. More complicated than it was a week ago." "Complicated how?" "My ex-wife called. She wants to see Clare.
She says she's been sober for 9 months and wants to be part of our daughter's life again."
Jayla felt something cold settle in her stomach.
She'd seen this scenario play out in other families, the addicted parent who appeared during stable periods, promising change and creating chaos regardless of their intentions.
"How does Clare feel about that?" "Scared. Hopeful. Confused. All the things an 11-year-old should never have to feel about her mother."
Cade ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions.
"And I'm terrified that I'm going to make the wrong choice either way." "What would the wrong choice look like?"
"Letting Amanda back into Claire's life and watching her relapse destroy my daughter's trust again. Or keeping them apart and depriving Claire of a relationship with her mother if Amanda really has changed." Jayla moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion and worry etched in the lines around his eyes.
"Cade, you don't have to figure this out alone." "Don't I? This is my family, my responsibility. I can't ask someone else to take on the chaos that comes with Amanda's return." "You're not asking. I'm offering."
The simple statement hung between them, loaded with meaning that went far beyond support through a difficult situation. Jayla was essentially saying that she was willing to stay, to navigate the complications, to be part of whatever came next.
"Jayla, you don't understand what you're signing up for.
Amanda is, when she's using, she's manipulative, unpredictable, destructive.
Even in recovery, she brings drama and complexity to everything she touches."
"I spent years trying to manage the chaos, trying to protect Claire while still hoping Amanda would get better."
"I can't ask you to step into that. You're not asking. And I'm not naive about addiction or complicated family dynamics. My father struggled with alcoholism before he got sober. I know what it looks like when someone you love is fighting demons you can't defeat for them." The revelation that Jayla had personal experience with addiction shifted something in Cade's understanding of her offer.
She wasn't speaking from innocent optimism but from hard-won wisdom about loving someone through recovery.
"I don't want you to feel obligated. Cade."
She reached out to touch his arm, the contact sending warmth through both of them.
"I'm not offering because I feel obligated.
I'm offering because I care about you and Claire, and because I know what it's like to navigate difficult family situations alone."
"Even if it means dealing with my ex-wife's attempts to reclaim her family? Even if it means potential custody battles and relapse scares and all the mess that comes with addiction recovery? Even then."
The certainty in her voice, the unwavering eye contact, the way she stepped closer instead of backing away, all of it conveyed a level of commitment that Cade hadn't dared to hope for.
"Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because some things are worth fighting for.
Because Claire deserves to have adults in her life who will show up consistently, regardless of how complicated things get.
And because..."
She paused, gathering courage for complete honesty. "Because I'm falling in love with both of you, and I'm not going to let fear of potential complications talk me out of something that feels this right."
The words hung in the air between them, honest and brave and utterly transformative.
Jayla had just admitted to feelings that neither of them had been willing to name, had just committed to staying through difficulties that would challenge any relationship.
Jayla.
Before he could finish the thought, she stepped close enough that they were breathing the same air, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes and count the freckles across her nose.
"I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for 2 weeks.
But I also know that some connections transcend timelines, and what I feel for you isn't going away just because your life gets more complicated." The words broke through the last of Cade's defenses. Here was someone offering to stay, to fight, to build something together despite the obstacles. Someone who saw his complicated family situation not as a burden to be managed but as a reality to be navigated together. "I'm falling in love with you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been since that first night at dinner, when you fixed our sink and made our house feel like home.
But I'm terrified of dragging you into something that could hurt you. Love always involves the risk of getting hurt.
But avoiding that risk means missing out on all the beauty that comes with taking the chance." They stood there in the small art room, surrounded by children's supplies and the sound of distant conversations from the main event, both understanding that they'd just crossed a line from careful friendship into acknowledged love. The moment felt both intimate and monumental, the kind of turning point that would define everything that came after.
"So what happens now?" Cade asked. "Now we figure it out together.
We arrange for Claire to meet with her mother in a safe, controlled environment.
We support each other through whatever comes next.
We build something real and strong enough to weather the storms that life throws at us.
Together? Together."
As if to seal the promise, Cade reached up to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones with reverent gentleness. The moment before he kissed her felt suspended in time, all the careful restraint and cautious friendship dissolving into something deeper and more elemental. When their lips met, it was with the kind of tenderness that spoke of promises being made, of two people choosing each other despite the complications and uncertainties ahead. The kiss was soft but sure, passionate but patient, conveying months of feeling in a single perfect moment of connection. They broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together, both breathing unsteadily from the impact of finally acknowledging what had been building between them. "The girls are going to be so smug," Jayla whispered, making Cade laugh despite the emotional intensity of the moment.
"They orchestrated this entire thing, didn't they? From the very beginning.
We never stood a chance against their matchmaking skills." As they made their way back to the main event, hands linked in a gesture that felt both natural and revolutionary, both Cade and Jayla understood that they'd just committed to something that would require courage, communication, and the kind of trust that could only be built through weathering storms together. The road ahead would be complicated, filled with custody arrangements and recovery challenges and the delicate work of blending families. But for the first time in years, neither of them felt like they had to face those challenges alone.
Part 7.
3 weeks later, two families sat in a family therapist's office, navigating one of their most delicate conversations. Amanda Bennett looked healthier than she had in years, clear-eyed, steady, cautiously hopeful. But nervous too, acutely aware she was facing the daughter she'd abandoned and the man she'd hurt with her addiction. Clare sat close to her father, her hand firmly in his, but her curious eyes studied the woman who'd given birth to her.
Jayla and Iris were there for moral support, a decision that had surprised everyone except the children themselves.
"I asked them to come," Clare had explained to the therapist earlier. "Because Iris and her mom are part of our family now, and family should stick together during important things." The simple statement had brought tears to Amanda's eyes, not because she disagreed, but because she recognized the maturity in her daughter that came from learning to define family through commitment rather than biology.
Claire, Amanda said, her voice slightly shaky but determined, I want you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most loving thing I could do at the time. I was so sick, and I couldn't stop hurting the people I loved most. Are you better now? Claire asked with the directness that children use when they need real answers. I'm in recovery, which means I'm learning how to be better every day. But I can't promise I'll never get sick again, because addiction doesn't work that way. What I can promise is that I'm doing everything in my power to stay healthy, and that I'll never again put my sickness before your well-being. What does that mean for me? For us? It means I'd like to be part of your life, if you want that. Not as someone trying to replace what you and your dad have built, but as someone who loves you and wants to support the amazing person you're becoming. Claire looked around the room at her father's encouraging nod, at Jayla's gentle smile, at Iris's supportive presence. The family she'd built around herself was solid enough to make room for one more person, even one who came with complications. I'd like that, she said finally. But I want to go slow. And I want everyone to know that Dad and Jayla and Iris are my real family now. You can be part of it, but you can't try to change it. The boundary, set with 11-year-old clarity, made every adult in the room proud of Claire's emotional intelligence. She was willing to open her heart to her mother while still protecting the family structure that had given her stability and love. I understand, Amanda said, her voice thick with gratitude. And Claire? I want you to know that I think your dad chose incredibly well. Jayla seems like exactly the kind of woman who deserves to be part of your family. The acknowledgement, generous and gracious, helped heal something in all of them. Amanda was choosing to support her daughter's happiness rather than compete for her affection, a sign of genuine recovery that went beyond simply staying sober. Later that afternoon, as both families gathered at Cade's house for what had become their traditional Saturday dinner, the dynamics felt different but not uncomfortable. Amanda was there, tentative but genuine, asking Claire about school and friends with the careful attention of someone rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Derek, meanwhile, had finally accepted Jayla's decision about their marriage. His last phone call had been brief and businesslike, focused on custody arrangements and financial agreements rather than attempts at reconciliation. The final divorce papers had been signed the week before, officially closing one chapter of Jayla's life and opening another. Mom, Iris said as they cleared dishes after dinner, do you think we should start looking for a bigger place? I mean, if we're going to be spending this much time here, maybe we should think about houses that have room for everyone. The suggestion, delivered with typical 11-year-old practicality, made both Cade and Jayla pause in their dish drying to look at each other. Are you suggesting we move in together? Jayla asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't opposed to the idea. I'm suggesting you think about what makes sense for our family, Iris replied with dignity. We're already together most evenings anyway. And Claire and I do our homework better when we can help each other. And Dad makes really good coffee in the mornings. Plus, Claire added, appearing with the last of the serving bowls, if you lived here, Mom wouldn't have to drive back and forth so much when she comes to visit. She could just stay in the guest room. The girls had clearly been planning this conversation, working out logistics with the kind of thoroughness that suggested they'd given serious thought to blending their families permanently. What do you think? Cade asked Jayla quietly, stepping close enough that their conversation wouldn't be overheard by their daughters. I think, Jayla said, reaching up to straighten his collar in the kind of intimate gesture that had become natural between them, that I've never felt more at home anywhere than I do in this house with these people. Even with all the complications? Amanda's visits, custody schedules, the chaos that comes with blending families? Especially with all the complications. Because navigating them together has shown me that we're building something strong enough to handle whatever life throws at us. 6 months later, their new backyard filled with friends and family celebrating Claire's 12th birthday. The kind of effortless party that comes from genuine joy rather than perfect execution. Amanda was there, more relaxed now, her recovery stable enough for consistent weekly visits with Claire. She and Jayla had developed cautious but respectful friendship built on shared commitment to Claire's happiness. Derek made occasional appearances at Iris's school events from his new city, a safe distance that felt more like relief than loss. Some people were meant to be footnotes, not main characters.
Ruby Rodriguez was holding court near the dessert table, regaling anyone who would listen with stories about the beautiful romance she'd watched unfold between her neighbors. She'd taken credit for their relationship from day one, claiming that her intervention during Derek's confrontational visit had been the turning point that brought them together. "I knew from the moment I saw them looking at each other that they were meant to be," she told Natalie Bennett and Trevor Wang, who were sharing knowing looks about their friend's obvious happiness. "Sometimes you just have to help love alone when people are too scared to trust what they're feeling." Across the yard, Cade and Jayla were setting up a game of cornhole while their daughters provided running commentary on their technique. They moved together with the easy coordination of people who'd learned each other's rhythms, finishing each other's sentences and sharing the kind of looks that spoke of deep contentment. "Dad," Clare said, abandoning the cornhole setup to throw her arms around Cade's waist, "this is the best birthday ever."
Better than the year we went to Disney World?
Way better. Because this year, everyone I love is here, and it feels like we're celebrating our whole family, not just me getting older. The simple statement encapsulated everything they'd built together, a family defined not by traditional structures but by love, commitment, and the daily choice to show up for each other regardless of complications.
MS.
Leah was right, Iris observed, referring to their school counselor who'd been watching their family's evolution with professional and personal interest. She said the best families are the ones people choose to build together, not just the ones they're born into. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Cade and Jayla found themselves alone on the back deck, watching Clare and Iris chase fireflies in the growing dusk. The scene was so perfectly domestic, so naturally peaceful, that it was hard to remember how complicated their path to this moment had been.
Do you ever think about how different things would be if the girls hadn't decided we belonged together? Jayla asked, settling into Cade's arms with the easy familiarity of someone who'd found her perfect fit.
"I think about how close I came to missing this," Cade replied, tightening his hold on her. "How I almost let fear and past wounds talk me out of the best thing that's ever happened to our family."
Even with all the challenges we've navigated? Amanda's recovery, Derek's attempts at reconciliation, blending our families, figuring out custody schedules?
Especially because of those challenges.
Going through them together showed me that what we have isn't fragile or conditional. It's strong enough to weather real storms.
As if summoned by their conversation, Clare and Iris abandoned their firefly chase to join their parents on the deck, settling into the outdoor furniture with the comfortable exhaustion of children who'd had a perfect day. "Mom, Dad," Iris said, using the titles that had evolved naturally as their family had blended, "Clare and I have been talking, and we have a question."
"Should we be worried?" Jayla asked with amusement, recognizing the tone that usually preceded their daughter's more ambitious schemes.
"We want to know if you're planning to get married," Clare said with characteristic directness.
"Because if you are, we have some suggestions about the wedding."
The question hung in the air, both innocent and loaded with significance. Cade and Jayla had been so focused on building their daily life together that they hadn't formally discussed marriage, though both had begun thinking of their arrangement as permanent.
"What kind of suggestions?"
Cade stalled, processing their assumption that marriage was inevitable.
"Well," Iris began with the air of someone who'd given this considerable thought, "we think it should be in the backyard, because this is where our family really started feeling like a family.
And we think it should be small," Clare added, "just the people who really matter. Not like those huge weddings where you spend so much time talking to everyone that you don't get to enjoy being with each other." "And we think," both girls said in unison, clearly having rehearsed this part, "that we should be your joint maids of honor, because we're the ones who brought you together in the first place." The sweet confidence with which they'd planned a wedding that hadn't been proposed yet made both adults laugh, but it also crystallized feelings that had been growing stronger every day.
"Those sound like excellent suggestions," Jayla said carefully, "but don't you think the actual getting engaged part should happen before the wedding planning?"
"Dad's been carrying that ring around for 2 weeks, Clare observed with the matter-of-fact tone she used when stating obvious facts. "We figured he was just waiting for the right moment." Cade's hand instinctively moved to his jacket pocket, where a simple but elegant engagement ring had indeed been residing for the past 2 weeks. He'd bought it impulsively after a particularly perfect evening of family dinner and homework help, but hadn't found the courage to present it formally. "You knew about the ring?" he asked his daughter, though he wasn't entirely surprised by her perceptiveness.
"Dad, you're not as sneaky as you think you are."
Plus, you've been acting nervous and excited at the same time, which is exactly how people act when they're planning to propose. And mom's been humming more than usual, Iris added helpfully, which is what she does when she's really happy but trying not to get her hopes up about something. Both adults stared at their daughters, marveling at how thoroughly they'd been observed and analyzed by two 11-year-olds who apparently understood their emotional states better than they understood them themselves. So, Claire continued with growing excitement, are you going to ask her, or do we need to keep dropping hints until you figure it out? Cade looked at Jayla, eyes bright with tears and hope, biting her lip to contain her smile. The moment wasn't happening as he'd planned, no romantic dinner, no rehearsed speech, but exactly as their relationship had developed, with daughters as enthusiastic witnesses and advisors. Jayla Ellis, he said, reaching into his pocket for the ring that had been waiting for exactly this moment, will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this crazy, complicated, absolutely perfect family we've built together? Yes, she said without hesitation, her voice thick with emotion and joy. Yes, to all of it. To the marriage and the family and the life we're going to keep building together. The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been made specifically for her hand, which in Cade's mind, it had been. As he kissed her, gently at first, then with the passion of someone who'd found his other half. Clare and Iris erupted in cheers and applause that brought Ruby Rodriguez to her back door to see what the celebration was about. About time. Ruby called across the yard, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd predicted this outcome from the very beginning. I'll start planning the engagement party. Later that evening, after the girls had been tucked into bed with promises that they could help with every aspect of wedding planning, Cade and Jayla sat in their living room, admiring the way the engagement ring caught the light and marveling at how right everything felt. Do you think we're crazy? Jayla asked, curled against Cade's side on the couch they'd chosen together for their blended family home. Getting engaged after knowing each other for less than a year? I think we're smart, Cade replied, playing with her fingers and the ring that marked their commitment to each other. We've been through enough challenges together to know that what we have is real. We've navigated ex-spouses, recovery, divorce, blending families, custody arrangements. If we can handle all that and come out stronger, we can handle anything. The girls are going to take full credit for this engagement. The girls deserve full credit for this engagement. If Claire hadn't befriended Iris on that first day of school, if they hadn't orchestrated that initial pizza dinner, if they hadn't spent months creating opportunities for us to spend time together, we might have missed each other completely, Jayla finished, the thought making her hold him tighter. Two single parents, so focused on protecting our children and ourselves that we forgot to leave room for love. But we didn't miss each other. Thanks to two very determined 11-year-olds who decided their parents deserved to be happy. 1 year later, on a perfect September afternoon, the backyard was transformed once again. This time with white flowers and twinkling lights, filled with the family and friends who'd supported Cade and Jayla's journey to this moment. The wedding was exactly what Clare and Iris had envisioned, intimate, joyful, focused on celebration rather than spectacle. Amanda was there, now 18 months sober and increasingly present in Clare's life. Her relationship with her daughter was careful but genuine, built on consistent small moments rather than grand gestures. She and Jayla had developed a friendship based on their shared love for Clare and their mutual understanding of what it meant to put a child's well-being above adult pride. Derek had declined his invitation, which surprised no one and disappointed even fewer people. His absence was barely noted among the abundance of love and support from the family they'd chosen to build. Clare and Iris served as joint maids of honor, wearing matching dresses in soft lavender that made them look like the sisters they'd become. Their speech during the reception was a masterpiece of 11-year-old wisdom and 12-year-old eloquence, chronicling their parents' love story from their unique perspective as the matchmakers who'd made it all possible. We knew from the very first day that our parents were perfect for each other, Clare announced to the gathered guests. They just needed a little help figuring it out. Sometimes grown-ups are really slow about recognizing good things, Iris added with the authority of someone who'd observed adult behavior extensively. But once they figure it out, they're pretty good at making smart decisions. And now, both girls concluded together, we have the family we always dreamed of, plus some extra people who make it even better. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, the newly married couple found themselves alone on the same deck where they'd shared their first real conversation, where Cade had caught Jayla when the railing was loose, where they'd first acknowledged the feelings growing between them. "Mrs. Bennet," Cade said, testing out the name that Jayla had chosen to take, "how does it feel to be officially part of this family?" "Like coming home," she replied without hesitation. "Like everything I went through before was just preparing me to appreciate this moment, this life, these people who've become my whole world." From the living room window, they could see Clare and Iris working on a puzzle together, their heads bent close in concentration, their conversation punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter. Amanda was reading nearby, present but not intrusive, having learned to find her place in the family structure without trying to reshape it to her own needs.
"Do you think they know?"
Jayla asked, watching their daughters with the contentment of someone who'd found her purpose in loving this particular group of people.
"Know what?"
"That they saved us. That by bringing us together, they gave us the chance to become the people we were meant to be, not just as parents, but as partners, as a family, as individuals who learned that love doesn't make you weak or vulnerable.
It makes you stronger."
"I think they know exactly what they did," Cade replied, pulling his wife closer and marveling at how perfectly she fit against his side.
"And I think they're pretty proud of themselves for it."
Inside the house, Clare and Iris were indeed reflecting on their successful matchmaking efforts, but with the pragmatic satisfaction of children who'd accomplished exactly what they'd set out to do. "I'm really glad we decided to be best friends," Iris said, placing the final piece of their puzzle with satisfaction.
"Best friends and sisters," Clare corrected. "Because that's what we are now."
"Best friends who became sisters because we were smart enough to realize our parents belonged together."
"Do you think they'll have more kids?" Iris asked with the curiosity of someone considering whether their family might expand further. "Maybe. But even if they don't, we're already the perfect family.
We have everything we need: parents who love us, parents who love each other, and enough happiness to last forever."
"Forever's a really long time," Iris observed.
"Good thing we picked really good parents then," Clare replied with the confidence of someone who'd learned that love, when it's real and committed and daily chosen, really can last forever. In their newly blended, carefully chosen family, forever felt not just possible but inevitable. Two wounded hearts learning to trust again, two careful parents discovering that real love makes you braver, and two determined children who'd helped the people they loved find happiness.
What moments taught you that love is worth the risk? Have you been surprised by connection in unexpected places, or discovered the person you needed was waiting for you to be brave enough to see them?
Share your stories of love that grew from friendship, relationships that survived complications, or moments when taking a chance changed everything. Your experiences matter and inspire others to believe in finding their own perfect, imperfect, absolutely right kind of love. If you enjoyed this journey of two hearts becoming one family, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the beautiful messiness of real love. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a new episode in our diary of love, and remember, your own love story is still being written, and the best chapters might be just around the corner. Tomorrow, we'll share another tale of hearts finding their way home to each other, because love stories never get old, they just get more beautiful with each telling.